Breaking news. The numbers are in, and frankly, they're absolutely staggering.
They really are.
As of this morning, reports confirm that Ukraine has not just aimed for, but officially reached a domestic production capacity of 10 million drones per year.
10 million.
But here's the thing. That number, as massive as it is just the backdrop. The real headline is what happened just hours ago.
A massive strike.
A massive strike capability, reaching 500 kilometers deep behind enemy lines, has been unlocked. And it isn't using the missiles you read about, it's changing the entire geometry of the front lines.
It's Sunday, January 25, 2026.
Yeah.
The world woke up to a different kind of war today.
But before we get into the details of this strike and the tech that made it possible, a quick reminder. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. You do not want to miss what is coming next. I'm Alex. Join me with Uriah in the latest Deep Dive by Defense Report for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdown of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today, we're going to cover, well, the Industrial Revolution that is currently dismantling the Russian war machine.
And when we say Industrial Revolution, we aren't using that term lightly. We are talking about a fundamental shift in the DNA of European manufacturing.
Right.
We have reports confirming that the French automotive giant Renault, yes, the company that makes your city car, has officially entered the war effort.
Yeah.
They're converting historic assembly lines to churn out long-range drones.
We're also going to look at the technology making all this possible. New optical navigation systems that make these drones, well, effectively invisible to Russian jamming.
We'll break down the Rodeo 330, which is acting as a sword for Ukraine.
And we'll discuss how a European missile giant essentially stuffed a 155mm artillery shell inside a turbojet engine to create this Frankenstein cruise missile.
And perhaps most importantly, we have to talk about the anti-drone dome. Ukraine isn't just attacking, they're deploying interceptor drones to hunt Russian Shaheds in mid-air. It's a move that is finally flipping the economics of air defense on its head.
So let's start with that big number, 10 million drones. When I first read the report from the KSE Institute, I had to, double check the decimal place. It just sounds impossible. Where is this volume coming from?
It does sound impossible if you're thinking about traditional military procurement, where, buying 100 jets takes a decade. But this figure comes directly from KSE's analysis of Ukraine's 2025 output. And we need to nuance that number a bit.
Okay.
10 million isn't a pile of 10 million Reapers or Bayraktars sitting on a runway.
Right, this isn't 10 million planes.
Correct. It's a full spectrum. The vast majority are FPVs, first-person view drones, which are basically flying munitions. But the data shows a significant percentage are now heavy, deep strike, fixed-wing aircraft.
And the KSE report had this statistic that just floored me.
The 85% number.
Yes, that by the end of 2025, between 80 and 85% of all frontline targets were engaged by UAVs.
Let that sink in. Not artillery, not tanks.
For decades, artillery was the king of battle.
Now, it's a supporting actor. The drone is the primary weapon. And the driver for this is purely economic. The KSE data breaks down the cost to damage.
Okay.
To damage a target with a drone costs on average about $850.
$850, which is basically a rounding error compared to a guided artillery shell.
Exactly. A guided Excalibur shell is over $100,000. A Javelin missile is nearly $200,000. When you can get a somewhat tactical effect for $850, you create an economic asymmetry that just breaks the opponent's budget.
So Ukraine hasn't just bought drones.
No, they've evolved. The report calls it a drone state. They've built this decentralized ecosystem, garages, small factories, converted warehouses, that iterates technology faster than the US or NATO procurement systems can even schedule a committee meeting.
It reminds me of the software industry more than the defense industry. Move fast and break things.
That is literally the doctrine.
Yeah.
And it's working because they aren't waiting for permission to innovate.
Okay, so volume is one thing, but volume doesn't matter if you can't hit the target. And we know Russia has some of the most advanced electronic warfare, or EW, in the world.
They do. They jam GPS signals constantly.
Which brings us to the breaking news strike capability we mentioned at the top. That 500-kilometer reach.
And this is where the hardware gets really interesting. This capability is largely thanks to a new system from a company called EOS Technology. It's the Rodeo 330.
This is a French system.
Yes, French-made. And on paper, the specs are solid, but not, sci-fi. It's a loitering munition with a 500-kilometer range, 5 hours of endurance, and a 4-kilogram warhead. It launches from a simple catapult, so you can fire it from a truck in a forest clearing. No runway needed.
But here's the question that I think every listener who follows this conflict is asking. If I launch a drone 500 kilometers into Russia and they turn on their jammers, usually that drone just gets lost and crashes. How is the rotor different?
That is the aha moment. The rotor uses optical navigation.
Break that down for us. Is that just a fancy camera?
Think of it like a human pilot, but digital. Most drones, they fly blind. They're just trusting the GPS satellites to tell them where they are.
Right, following a coordinate signal.
And if you jam the GPS, the drone is blind and lost. The rotor, however, has an onboard camera that is constantly scanning the terrain below. It compares what it sees, rivers, roads, tree lines, to a map that it has stored internally.
So it's literally looking at the ground and saying, okay, that's the bend in the river, so I must be here.
Precisely. It performs scene matching. It doesn't care if the GPS is jammed, spoofed, or turned off completely. It is navigating by sight.
Which makes it effectively immune to the electronic jamming that has grounded so many other systems.
It does, and that changes the tactical utility completely. If you can't jam it, you have to physically shoot it down.
So how is it being used?
The manufacturer describes it this way. In Europe, this drone is sold as a shield, mostly for intelligence gathering. But in Ukraine,
It's a sword.
it is a sword. They are using it for deep strikes on oil refineries, air bases, and fuel depots. And because they use optical nav, they can operate in swarm mode.
Meaning you can send a whole cloud of them at once.
Exactly, you can send 20 of them at the same time. Since they aren't all fighting for a fragile GPS signal, they can coordinate a saturation attack that just overwhelms air defense radars.
It puts the Russian air defense in a terrible dilemma.
It does. Do you fire your expensive missiles at these cheap drones, or do you let them through and lose a refinery?
So we have the high-tech sword from EOS. But wars are rarely won by high-tech alone. Usually they're won by mass. And this brings us to what I think is the most surprising plot twist of 2026. Renault,
It's a headline that would have seemed absurd just 3 years ago.
the company that makes the Clio, the family hatchback. They're making weapons now.
They are. And this signals that Europe is finally waking up to the reality of a war economy. The French Minister of Armed Forces, Sébastien Lecornu, has been pushing for this for a while.
Moving beyond just donating old stocks.
Yes, moving from donating surplus to building actual industrial partnerships. So Renault has partnered with a defense contractor called Turgis Gaillard for a project codenamed Chorus.
Why a car company, though? I mean, surely someone like Dassault or Thales knows more about drones than Renault.
They know more about aerodynamics and avionics, but they don't know mass production. Defense contractors are artisans. They build highly complex systems in small numbers, dozens, maybe hundreds a year. Car manufacturers, they build thousands of units every single day. They understand supply chains, assembly lines, quality control at a scale the defense industry simply cannot comprehend.
So it's applying the logic of the automotive assembly line to warfare.
Exactly. Project Chorus is essentially a French answer to the Shahed drone, a long-range, one-way attack drone. And Renault's using its factories in Le Mans.
Famous for car racing, huh?
Right. And Cléon to build the chassis and the engines.
And what kind of numbers are we talking about here?
The target is up to 600 drones per month.
600 a month? That's a fleet every month.
It is massive. The potential contract value is up to 1 billion euros over 10 years. This isn't a temporary patch. It is a long-term structural shift. It's a strategic signal to Moscow saying, we have more factories than you.
There is a catch, though, right? When we talk about these Shahed-style drones, or even the Chorus, they are usually propeller-driven. They're slow, they sound like lawnmowers.
They do. And tactically, that's a real problem. They're vulnerable to simple machine gun fire or those Gepard anti-aircraft tanks. If you can hear it coming for 10 minutes, you can probably shoot it down.
So speed is the next hurdle to clear.
Enter MBDA. They're a European missile giant, and they've teamed up with a company called Aviation Design to solve exactly this problem. They've created something they call the one-way effector.
One-way effector, very military sounding.
It is. But the design philosophy behind it is brilliant. It ditches the piston propeller for a turbojet engine.
So it's fast.
Very fast.
Wow.
This thing hits speeds of 400 kilometers per hour.
That's nearly double the speed of a Shahed.
Right. And that makes it much harder to shoot down with small arms or slow anti-drone flag. It still has that 500-kilometer range, but it gets to the target fast.
But usually jet engines mean expensive. I thought the whole point of these drones was to be cheap. If we start putting turbojets on them, don't we lose that cost advantage?
Usually, yes. But here is where MBDA pulled off a brilliant cost-saving hack. They looked at the most expensive part of a missile, the warhead design, the integration, and they just said, why bother?
What do you mean?
They designed the fuselage to simply hold a standard 155mm artillery shell.
Wait, you're kidding. They just stuffed a standard artillery shell inside the drone.
Literally. The supply lines for 155mm shells already exist. They are mass-produced, so instead of building a complex new explosive, they just use what's already in the warehouse. It makes the system modular and significantly cheaper.
That is brilliant engineering.
It's a bit of a Frankenstein weapon, but it works. MBDA says they are ready to produce 1,000 of these units per month.
1,000 jet-powered artillery shells a month. It feels like the constraints of war are forcing engineers to be much more creative than they are in peacetime.
And it launches from a ramp without a booster, which simplifies the logistics on the ground. It is all about removing friction from the kill chain.
We've been talking a lot about drones, but we can't ignore the manned aviation aspect. Pilots are still flying missions, and they are getting some serious upgrades too. We keep hearing about the Hammer.
The AASM Hammer. It stands for Armin Air Sol Modulaire. Basically, it's a guidance kit that turns a dumb iron bomb 250 kilograms or 1,000 kilograms into a precision weapon. But it has a secret sauce that makes it different from the American JDAMs.
Right, because with a JDAM, you usually have to be high up to glide it far, and being high up in Ukraine is a death sentence for a pilot.
Correct. A glide bomb needs altitude to convert potential energy into range. But the Hammer, it has a solid fuel rocket booster. This is a game changer for survivability.
Oh, so?
It allows a Ukrainian pilot in a MiG-29 or an F-16 to fly incredibly low, hugging the terrain to avoid radar. They pitch the nose up, fire the Hammer, and then they peel away.
So they just sort of toss it.
Exactly. It's called toss bombing. The rocket kicks in, boosts the bomb up and over the horizon to the target, while the pilot stays safe at low altitude masked by the terrain.
And I understand there's a new version expanding this range even further.
The Hammer XLR. They've integrated ramjet or turbojet technology to extend the range from about 70 kilometers to somewhere between 150 and 200 kilometers.
A huge standoff distance.
Huge. France is currently providing about 50 of these a month, but production is scaling up. It gives manned aircraft a standoff capability that keeps them out of the range of most Russian air defenses entirely.
So we have covered the offense, the deep strikes, the jet drones, the Renault mass production, but we have to talk about defense, because Russia is still launching waves of Shaheds, sometimes 1,000 a day.
This is the strategic nightmare for Ukraine. It's the cost curve. If you shoot down a $20,000 Shahed drone with a $1 million Patriot missile, you might win the engagement, but you lose the war. You go bankrupt.
It's just ruinous math.
It is. So how do you fix the math? You stop using missiles, you fight drones with drones.
The anti-drone dome.
Exactly. Ukraine has deployed interceptor drones.
So, robot dogfights.
It sounds like science fiction, but it's reality. These are fast, agile UAVs models like the Sting or the Jedi Shahed Hunter. They fly at over 150, sometimes 300 kilometers per hour. They are designed to physically hunt down enemy drones in midair and either ram them or shoot them down at close range.
And the cost, that's the key part.
The cost-to-kill ratio is about 1 to 10. An interceptor costs a tiny fraction of a missile. But what's fascinating is how they've incentivized this. In the Chernihiv region, there's a program offering a $20,000 reward for every Shahed downed by these systems.
That's a bounty system.
It is capitalism applied to air defense, and that bounty is driving intense innovation among developers. By this month, January 2026, Ukraine is delivering 40,000 interceptors per month.
40,000 hunters in the sky. That creates a density of defense that a missile battery just cannot match. It's almost like an ecosystem predator's hunting prey.
And that density matters. It explains why Ukraine can withstand these massive barrages. They aren't relying solely on Western aid packages for air defense anymore. They're manufacturing their own solution, and they're doing it cheaper than the threat.
It seems like the common thread here is speed of innovation. And the UK is getting in on this too with Project Nightfall.
Right. This is the UK Ministry of Defence's program for a new ballistic missile. It's designed for launch and scoot, rapid fire, and movement. But the fascinating part isn't the missile itself, it's the deal structure. It's a data for funding symbiosis.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, think about it. France and the UK have the capital and the industrial capacity, like the Renault factories. But they haven't fought a high-intensity war in decades. They don't have the data.
And Ukraine does.
Ukraine provides the data polygon. They provide the battlefield. So French and British engineers are getting real-time feedback on how their tech performs against real Russian jamming, against real S-400 systems. They're iterating their technology faster than any peacetime R&D program could ever hope to.
It's a mutual survival strategy.
It is. Ukraine gets the volume they need to degrade Russian refineries and the Shadow Fleet, and Europe gets battle-hardened technology, and the impact is visible. Ukraine is systematically degrading Russian infrastructure. They're forcing Russia to spend billions on defense rather than offense.
It really is a total transformation. We have gone from static crunch warfare to a high-tech, mass production drone war, where car factories are building fleets and drones are hunting other drones.
And it raises a really important question for the future. We're seeing Renault pivot to war production so successfully.
And that's the thought I want to leave you with today. We've seen car companies make tanks in World War II, but that took years. This is happening now with high-tech software. So if a civilian car manufacturer like Renault can successfully pivot to building advanced military drones in mass quantities, 600 a month, what does that mean for the future of the automotive industry globally? Are we looking at a future where every major industrial power has a dormant air force just sitting on its assembly lines waiting for a software update and a tooling change?
It is a sobering thought. The line between civilian industry and military capability has never been blurrier.
You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Aria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.